what the subject matter is. And I always respect that about Bill. And Casey, I want to thank you for being here.
Robert Parish never raised his voice to prove a point. He never needed theatrics to command respect. The moment he stepped onto the floor, the game shifted. The Chief carried a presence that could silence an arena. Tall, composed, unshakable. Every opponent understood one thing. If you wanted to beat Robert Parish, you had to survive a battle that never stopped. 21 seasons, 4 NBA championships, 9 All-Star selections, a career built on endurance and discipline. Parish never chased attention because he trusted the work. He trusted repetition. He trusted the simple truth that a player who shows up every night is more dangerous than a star who shines only when the lights feel comfortable. That mindset turned him into one of the most reliable big men the league has ever seen. His game was stripped of ego. No wasted movement. No unnecessary flair. Just sharp footwork, a high-release jumper you could not reach, and defensive positioning that felt like a trap you could never escape. He ran the floor with purpose. He defended with patience. And he attacked with a quiet intensity that left opponents frustrated because there was no weakness to exploit and no emotion to read. Teammates admired him because he was a pillar. Rivals respected him because he never broke. Coaches loved him because he absorbed every detail and executed without hesitation. Parish was the rare competitor who delivered the same level of focus in January that he delivered in June. That is why veterans still call him one of the toughest matchups of the Golden Era. But here's the truth that gives this story weight. Parish remembered the players who pushed him past his comfort zone. He carried those matchups with him, not out of anger but out of respect. These were the men who matched his discipline, challenged his pride, and forced him to elevate every part of his game. Today, we reveal those names. 5 rivals who earned the respect of a man who rarely gave it. 5 players who tested his resolve. 5 opponents who defined what toughness looked like in the 80s. Before we break down that list, we need to understand the foundation behind that steel focus and why Robert Parish measured greatness differently from most players. Robert Parish was shaped long before he ever wore Celtics green. Growing up in Shreveport, Louisiana, he learned early that nothing was guaranteed. He was quiet even then, but not out of shyness. It was focus. It was survival. Parish built his identity on patience and discipline, 2 traits that would become the backbone of his entire career. His journey to the NBA did not begin with hype or national headlines. He went to Centenary College, a small program that rarely produced pros. There were no bright spotlights, no magazine covers, no predictions of stardom. Parish built himself in empty gyms and early morning practices, while the rest of the country overlooked him. That anonymity forged something stronger than confidence. It forged conviction. When he reached the league, he was raw but relentless. And when Boston traded for him in 1980, everything changed. Under the pressure of a historic franchise, and alongside Larry Bird and Kevin McHale, Parish sharpened every part of his game. The Celtics demanded toughness. They demanded precision. They demanded players who understood that winning was a responsibility, not a reward. Parish fit that culture perfectly. He became the anchor of one of the greatest front courts in basketball history. Bird brought the fire. McHale brought the footwork, but Parish brought the balance. His presence protected the paint, stabilized the offense, and gave Boston the physical backbone it needed to dominate the decade. To understand why his respect means so much, you have to understand the values he lived by. Hard work, consistency, integrity. Parish did not admire talent alone. He admired endurance. He admired players who kept coming at him possession after possession. He admired the ones who refused to back down. And now we count down the 5 players who earned that rare respect. Number 5 is Hakeem Olajuwon, a rival who forced Robert Parish to face something few centers in the 80s were prepared for, a blend of speed, footwork, and instinct that felt generations ahead of its time. Parish respected power. He respected intelligence. But what Hakeem brought was a different level of craft. When the Celtics matched up with the Rockets, Parish understood he was dealing with a center who could shift the rhythm of a game with a single move. Hakeem was unpredictable in the most dangerous way. He attacked from angles that big men were never supposed to use. His footwork was smooth and precise, almost like a guard trapped in a giant's frame. Parish was known for his discipline, but Hakeem forced him to adjust every possession. One moment, Hakeem would fake middle. The next, he would spin baseline. Then came the dream shake, a move that froze even the most seasoned defenders. Parish had seen great scorers before, but Hakeem's ability to create space without brute force earned his respect immediately. Their battles were intense but clean. Hakeem competed with a quiet edge that reminded Parish of the values he held himself. No trash talk, no extra push after the whistle. Just pure basketball skill, delivered with near-surgical precision. Parish admired players who worked on their craft, and Hakeem's dedication was obvious. Every game against him felt like a chess match played at high speed. Parish could not rely on strength alone. He had to read Hakeem's body, anticipate the timing, and stay disciplined against moves he had rarely seen. One of the things that stuck with Parish the most was how quickly Hakeem learned. If Parish stopped one move early in the game, Hakeem came back with a counter. If Parish positioned himself to take away the baseline, Hakeem shifted to a mid-post fadeaway. There was no comfort zone, no routine. Hakeem forced Parish to think, to react, and to maintain focus at a level that few opponents demanded. The respect between them came from the purity of the matchup. Parish valued opponents who made him better without crossing the line. Hakeem embodied that perfectly. There was no frustration, no hostility, only challenge. Parish understood that their battles represented the evolution of the position. He was the model of the traditional disciplined center. Hakeem was the blueprint for the modern one. When Parish looked back on his toughest assignments, Hakeem always made the list. Not because of physical punishment or heated rivalry, but because skill at that level leaves a permanent impression. Parish appreciated greatness that did not rely on noise. Hakeem gave him exactly that. Number 4 is Patrick Ewing, the proud cornerstone of the New York Knicks, and one of the fiercest competitors Robert Parish ever faced. If Hakeem challenged Parish with finesse, Ewing challenged him with force. Every matchup between Boston and New York felt like a test of will. The Celtics relied on precision and discipline. The Knicks brought raw power and relentless pressure. At the center of that clash stood Ewing, a 7-footer who attacked every possession like it meant something. Parish respected players who brought intensity without losing control, and Ewing embodied that balance. He was physical, but he was not reckless. He battled, but he did not need cheap shots to assert himself. What Parish admired most was Ewing's commitment to the basics. His high-post jumper was a weapon. His back-to-the-basket game was strong and structured. His defense was anchored by timing and discipline. There were no shortcuts in Ewing's approach, and that resonated deeply with someone like Parish who lived by the same code. Their collisions in the paint were some of the toughest of the 80s and early 90s. Ewing came at Parish with a strong shoulder, a quick turnaround, or a mid-range shot that seemed impossible to contest. Parish had to stay balanced, stay grounded, and stay mentally sharp. Ewing forced him to absorb contact, adjust his angles, and respect the pace of every possession. There were games where Parish felt every hit the next morning, but that was exactly why Ewing earned his admiration. Another reason Parish ranked Ewing so high was how much responsibility he carried. New York depended on him for everything: scoring, defense, leadership, rhythm. In many ways, Ewing reminded Parish of himself only with a louder stage and heavier expectations. That level of pressure could break a player, but Ewing never bent. He showed up every night with the same fire, no matter the opponent, no matter the moment. Their rivalry never needed drama. It never needed trash talk. The respect grew naturally through repetition. Every time Parish saw Ewing across the court, he knew he was in for a long, bruising night. He also knew it would be fair, honest, and fought the right way. Parish valued opponents who took the game seriously. Ewing played with a level of pride and professionalism that left a lasting mark. When Parish reflected on the legends who pushed him physically and mentally, Ewing always stood near the top. His strength was real, his skill was polished, and his competitive spirit never dipped. Those qualities earned Parish's respect and locked Ewing into this list. Number 3 is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the benchmark for every center of his generation, and the man Robert Parish considered the ultimate test of discipline. Kareem was not simply an opponent, he was a standard. If you wanted to call yourself elite in the 80s, you had to face Kareem and hold your ground. Most players never did. Parish, however, welcomed the challenge because Kareem demanded precision on every possession. The first thing Parish respected about Kareem was longevity. Kareem was still dominating late into his 30s and even into his 40s, not with raw power, but with mastery. Parish recognized that level of sustained excellence because it mirrored what he valued most, the ability to stay sharp, stay prepared, and stay effective long after others faded. Kareem's career was proof that intelligence and skill could outlast athleticism. And of course, there was the skyhook, the most unstoppable shot basketball has ever seen. Parish studied it, timed it, measured it, and still struggled to touch it. Kareem could release it over any defender. He could hit it from almost any angle. It was a weapon that punished even the smallest hesitation. Parish admired how Kareem refined that shot into something closer to a signature than a move. It represented discipline at the highest level, a level Parish deeply respected. Their matchups were quieter than the Celtics' battles with the Pistons or the Knicks, but the intensity was no less real. Lakers versus Celtics always carried weight. When Kareem stepped onto the court, the stakes rose immediately. Parish knew he could not afford a slow start or a moment of distraction. Kareem forced him to elevate every detail, from foot positioning to timing on contests to the way he protected the paint on the other end. Offensively, Parish also respected Kareem's intelligence. Kareem did not chase highlight plays. He played within structure, moved with purpose, and used angles with surgical precision. Parish admired that. It reflected a game built on fundamentals, repetition, and patience. Those were the same pillars that shaped Parish's own approach. In Kareem, he saw a different version of himself, only with a level of polish that made him one of the greatest to ever do it. What solidified Kareem's place on this list was the way he carried himself. He was calm, professional, and fiercely competitive without performing for the crowd. Parish valued opponents who respected the game, and Kareem embodied that respect. Every duel felt like an education. Every possession demanded maturity. To Parish, Kareem was not just a rival. He was a blueprint for greatness. Number 2 is Moses Malone, the powerhouse, who brought out a different side of Robert Parish. If Kareem tested Parish's discipline and intelligence, Moses tested his survival. Parish respected skill, but he respected force just as much. And Moses delivered force in its purest form. Every possession against him felt like a collision. Every rebound felt like a fight. Every minute spent on the court with him demanded total commitment. Moses did not rely on finesse. He relied on relentless effort. He was the rare player who created his own rhythm by attacking the glass with a hunger that never faded. Parish admired that intensity. Moses jumped twice before most centers jumped once. He carved out space with a low center of gravity and a strength that surprised even veteran big men. Parish often said that Moses had the most powerful frame he ever battled, and that was not an exaggeration. When Moses planted his feet, he simply did not move. Their matchups were physical from the first whistle. Moses came at Parish with a determination that made every possession feel urgent. There were no plays off, no breaks, no moments where Moses coasted. His second jump, his contact absorption, his ability to turn offensive rebounds into points made him one of the most exhausting players Parish ever guarded. And that exhaustion was exactly why the respect ran so deep. Parish valued players who committed to the grind, and no one embraced the grind more than Moses Malone. 3-time MVP, one of the greatest rebounders in league history, a symbol of effort elevated to an art form. Moses never needed polish. He dominated through repetition and willpower. Parish recognized that mindset instantly because he lived by a similar code. They were different types of big men, but they shared the same devotion to preparation and physical honesty. The Celtics and Sixers met repeatedly in the 80s, and each series demanded more from Parish. Moses pushed him into uncomfortable territory. He forced him to fight for deep position rather than rely on timing alone. He forced him to brace for contact before the ball even arrived. He forced him to match intensity, possession after possession. Parish never backed down, but Moses made sure he had to bring everything he had. What Parish admired most was how Moses respected the game. Moses did not waste time with showmanship or talk. He played hard, accepted results, and moved on. His toughness was not built on intimidation, but on certainty. He knew exactly who he was, and he played like it every night. When Parish looked back on the opponents who tested his pride and stamina, Moses Malone stood near the very top. Skill can impress you. Intelligence can challenge you. But someone who refuses to stop coming at you leaves a mark that lasts much longer. Number 1 is Bill Laimbeer, the opponent who pushed Robert Parish further than anyone else. Not because of elegance or skill, not because of footwork or polish, but because Laimbeer forced every player he faced to confront their own threshold. He made you decide what kind of competitor you really were. Parish respected many players, but only a few ever got under his skin. Laimbeer was the rare one who did both. Boston versus Detroit in the late 80s was not basketball for the faint of heart. It was confrontation. It was pride. It was punishment, delivered at playoff speed. And at the center of it all stood Laimbeer, a 7-footer with a reputation for hard fouls, sharp elbows, and absolute commitment to pushing boundaries. Parish did not like the style, but he respected what it represented. Laimbeer played to win, and never apologized for the chaos he created. Their clashes became part of NBA history. Laimbeer bumped on screens, grabbed for position, held jersey fabric when referees looked away and dared opponents to match his edge. Parish was usually calm, never shaken, and almost impossible to provoke. Yet Laimbeer drew a reaction from him more than once, because Laimbeer attacked not just your body, but your composure. He tried to tilt the emotional balance. He tried to make you break your rhythm. And that was the real challenge for Parish. Physical contact he could handle. He had battled Moses Malone, Patrick Ewing, and countless others. But controlling your own fire in the middle of a rivalry like Boston versus Detroit required a different kind of toughness. Laimbeer demanded that from him. Every possession was a test of patience. Every box out was a test of strength. Every collision was a test of self-control. Parish respected players who showed up fearlessly, and Laimbeer never backed away from a fight. For all the controversy surrounding Detroit's bad boys, Laimbeer played his role with precision. He spaced the floor with shooting, protected the paint with physical presence, and understood how to disrupt rhythm without needing superior athleticism. Parish admired the intelligence behind the mayhem. Laimbeer knew exactly what he was doing, and every action had a purpose. But the real reason Laimbeer ranks number 1 is because he exposed a fundamental truth about competition. To win at the highest level, sometimes you have to confront the opponent who brings out parts of yourself you rarely show. Parish was disciplined, controlled, and composed, but Laimbeer forced him to defend that identity every time the ball came into play. Respect in the NBA is not always given to the most skilled. Sometimes it goes to the one who makes you fight for your balance. Laimbeer was that opponent for Robert Parish. He forced emotion from a man who almost never showed any. He demanded intensity from a player already known for it. And whether fans loved him or hated him, Laimbeer earned a place in Parish's memory that would never fade. When you look at the 5 names on Robert Parish's list, a clear picture emerges. These were not opponents who relied on flash or theatrics. They were men who brought pressure, intelligence, and force to every possession. Hakeem Olajuwon tested his discipline with unmatched skill. Patrick Ewing tested his endurance with strength and pride. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar tested his understanding of the position with a level of mastery the game had never seen. Moses Malone tested his resolve with relentless power and effort, and Bill Laimbeer tested his composure with a brand of competitiveness that pushed emotional limits. Together they reflect the full spectrum of what greatness meant in the 80s. Parish respected players who showed up every night with purpose. He valued consistency. He valued toughness. He valued opponents who treated the paint like sacred ground and understood that every inch had to be earned. These 5 names shaped him because each exposed a different piece of what it took to survive and succeed during that era. Parish never asked for the spotlight. He never needed recognition to validate his work. What mattered to him was the battle itself, the responsibility to compete with integrity, the duty to honor the game. That is why the respect he offered carried so much weight. It was measured, it was honest, and it was rooted in years of collisions, adjustments, and long playoff nights. Looking back, the story of Robert Parish is not just about championships or longevity. It is about a man who built his legacy through calm strength, a player who proved that greatness does not need volume. It only needs consistency and conviction. Now the question goes to you. If you watched that era, if you lived through those battles, who would make your list?